Welcome to Leadership in Tech, a bi-weekly podcast series on software engineering and product development. I'm your host, Pradipe Yoggi, a senior engineering leader with more than a decade of senior leadership experience in public and PE-backed tech companies. The views expressed by me or my guests are not the views of my employer or those of my guests' employers. Take a listen, share, subscribe, and comment. Welcome to Leadership in Tech. Today, my guest is Ilias Beshimov. He is the co-founder and head of product of ClassHour. Ilyas, you've had an illustrious career in product development and engineering. Why don't you give our listeners an intro?
Appreciate it, Pradipe. Thank you for having me on your show. My background, started serendipitously. What I think that led me on a path towards working in AI today, which is an exciting field, and as common topic in the space, it starts with, to really succeed in AI, you got to understand the data, the source of data that's available to you. And that was my first career, working with medical data. When I was finishing college, I wanted to build a platform that unified medical data, standardize it to be able to release as a layer for more advanced medical digital services to offer. So that work with data, understanding how to aggregate, how to build it, the importance of it, reverberated through my career, eventually leading me to my founding startup Serendipitous, which applied AI to the recruitment space, and today ClassHour.
Wow, that's great. So briefly, what does ClassHour do?
So ClassHour is bringing top live executive education to enterprises. There is an interesting thing happened in our world is that during COVID, everybody learned how to be effective in a virtual environment. We can work, we can have meetings, we can learn, we can collaborate. It has not taken away from us the need for human interaction. And that human interaction is critical when it comes to education. We need to be able to, especially as adults, especially adult learners, to have interactive discussions with our professors, with our classmates. So we thought, so what is the best form of education? And that is really, small Oxford-style seminar when it's you and 20 other students where you debate, you discuss, and that's the process by which to learn. It's not about just obtaining information, but psychologically, the connections, the peer pressure, that allows us to understand it and internalize it, and therefore to be able to apply. So we thought, how can we bring that in a larger scale to enterprises? How can we help them hire top professors from schools like Harvard and MIT and Oxford and Cambridge to give live seminars to their executives? And that's what we've been building to help enterprise learners lecturers learn this through this method.
Great. So now, you've had a successful exit with Serendipitous as a product leader. How did that come about?
Mm-hmm. So with Serendipitous, it was a serendipity that led us to, be acquired by AngelList. I guess today they're called Well-Found, the AngelList talent. It started a few years back where we're looking, actually it started during the very beginning of COVID. We're a recruitment company, we're applying AI, and we're helping companies recruit technical talent. And as you can imagine, the first 6 months of COVID, no phone calls were ringing. Nobody was hiring. And, it was an interesting time. It's hard, interesting to reflect upon the crazy run we had, with the COVID stimuli money and other recovery, because during the first 6 months, everybody was saying, look, the sky is falling, economy is in a bad. Even Sequoia was publishing articles such as prepare, the winter is here, save your cash. And none of our customers are hiring. So we're looking for ways to find additional revenue model. And what the strengths that set Serendipitous apart is our ability of bring a deep people profiles, that is what we call the talent graph, because of us being able to map to understand technical and talent landscape, what the strengths, weaknesses, backgrounds, potential skills that we have, and our ability to accurately match them for a role where they are fit for the role, but it's also the type of role the person would be interested in. So we started looking out for opportunities, and a good friend of mine was working for Angelus Talent. And I said, could you please just introduce me to your head of engineering, your head of product, because maybe that's something that can benefit. Luckily, it is something they were looking into in terms of how to improve their own matching for their platform. So we thought there could be really good opportunity to collaborate, because we can bring deeper profiles to them than they had just relying on Angelus data, because we pretty much trolled the entire web for signals of people, and we're very good at matching. So we had conversations, discussions, technology opportunities. It really, at that point, it didn't lead to anywhere. At the time, was still early days of COVID, panic. There was really kind of not a big driver for us to try to partner at the time. But fast forward a few years later, we reconnected because of prior interactions, and that felt like the better time for us to connect and partner in terms of kind of things that Angelus was working on, where Stellantis technology could really fit in and turbocharge our offering.
Nice. Excellent. So if I'm not mistaken, you don't have a computer science major, is that right?
Correct, I do not.
How did you get started in product development / tech? And do you think not having a background in theoretical computer science perhaps helped you build and develop many successful products, have exits? What's your take on that?
It's an excellent question. I do think it held me back. So my background is I started as a mechanical engineer, and then I transferred to economics. And I don't have software engineering. The way I got into product development is really naivety of ignorance. My first job out of college was trying to build my own startup in healthcare space, which I knew very little about healthcare. I knew never built tech products until then. But for some reason, I thought I could do it. I should give it a try. I was able to even raise, good angel financing as a first-time founder. Serendipity and luck and exuberance of youth. When eventually time came to close that venture, I was trying to reflect upon, what I'd like to do next, what I like to do. And I realized, the best thing about my venture called My Health is the part that apparently is called product management. You work with engineers to define what a product is, and you go build it. What I think held me back is the backgrounds that I had allowed me to identify opportunities to be able to strategic long-term to identify what should we do to try to take advantage of that opportunity, create some business case. Where it held me back is a technical understanding in terms of what is the best path to get there. If you're starting from scratch, you need to understand what kind of trade-offs you're making so that you want to go faster, better for the future. Or if it's an existing product, it's potentially more complicated, because you need to understand what's the best path given all the existing infrastructure, tech debt, prior decisions that you have to deal with. Not having that, I had to rely on my technical leads, my engineering partners, to be able to help me with those decisions. And it took me time to learn how to work most effectively, so that we're both on the same page in terms of what we really care about, so that we can make optimal decisions. And it took me time to learn enough to, what's called to be dangerous, so that I could make good decisions without necessarily having to rely on them for a decision on my engineering counterparts. But it took effort, it took learning. That if I would have had an engineering background, probably could have done better faster.
The reason I asked that question was I felt personally myself in my entrepreneurship venture earlier that I was stymied by the fact that I knew how to build things, because I was focusing on building it rather than product market fit.
It's true. It is a function of what are we focusing on? Maybe having been trained as a software engineer, you are very much forced to think in terms of only technical requirements rather than the strategic business objectives that you really are optimizing for. And maybe it's a function of training, maybe it's a function of thinking, maybe it's something else. The interesting thing is, when building Silential, I personally interviewed, I think, close to 3,000 software engineers for customers, because for Silential, these days, I love the modern day of technology and all the AI revolution we have, because it's very easy to explain what we did. We built an AI recruiting agent that took your requirements and did all the million different steps orchestration to get you to have the right person respond to you and say, yes, I will interview you, which is really absolutely the hardest part when it comes to recruiting for any tech company. Get a good person to say, I will have that first conversation. Now, so we built a recruiting agent. But before we did it, we dog-footed internally our technology and we worked as recruiters. Traditional 20%, but we're just technology-enabled recruiters. And I had to take a lot of recruiting engineering calls for the first thing. 1 year of Silential, that 10 hours a day for me was talking to engineers, and the rest was figuring out how to automate it and scale it. And there was very clear, we even tracked it in terms of people's income and basically how much they commanded, years of experience, try to normalize it in our score of the person. And it was really, you can ask them questions. Tell me what you did that was very important and how they answered it. And as I told you how that's important for business, you can see clear correlations that their career was a lot more on a faster track, even when it counts for the type of schools they went to, companies, everything else, versus if they jumped into this technical speak. Oh, I connected this system to that system and I did this and that. I'm like, okay, but so what? Why is this important? Having this understanding is what set people apart. And that's what set all the best engineers that I work with apart, is they focused and talked and prioritized what matters for business, where technology, it truly is just a method, not the goal.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you don't know if it's a function of training and so on. I feel it's also a function of urgency, right? The urgency to get something out. Because, one of the things I've realized is you have to build something that is not the end architecture, something that is quick, that you can get out, right? And you can actually get some traction. Then you build out the full architecture as your scale starts happening. You don't have to build that on day one. That was my takeaway from how I went about building things.
So true. But I really think it's not truly training. I think because people we choose to go software engineering are people who are, actually on average, I think quite intelligent, very smart relative to a lot of other occupations. They have to be quite intelligent, maybe scientific in their mind, one way to describe it. What makes it harder for those people is to really embrace risk, because a lot of engineering training is around reducing risk, reducing unpredictability. And this type of mindset, when they present a problem like we need to launch something pushback, is there's a lot of unknowns. There's very open-ended questions. And for people who typically go into engineering, that's uncomfortable. They don't want to unknowns, especially known unknowns, make most engineers very uncomfortable. They try to focus and bury themselves on what they can control, what they understand, and bury themselves in trying to focus on that without to sometimes say, hey, yes, we are making calculated risk. We just need to be aware that this is what we're doing and we have a good reason for it. And we have hypotheses that may or may not be validated later, which is why I think right now is an interesting path. And again, it changes the people who are building AI products, because a lot of AI products, the ones we're using by today, are by definition, they are non-deterministic. They're stochastic. There is inherent risk in it. So you have to think about differently how you're approaching what you're building and the case that's producing. And for a lot of people who are more traditionally trained and that's mindset that does not embrace risk, cannot deal with it, that's a hard world to operate in.
Yeah. So now, how did you get started with entrepreneurship, right? Like, so what led you, like, out of college, what led you to your first venture?
Oh my God, that's honestly, I can summarize as stupidity. Stupidity, it truly is exuberance in embracing risk in a way that I don't know if I would do today. To go back, starting entrepreneurship is. I was graduating from college. It was 2009, and Obama was introduced the stimuli money to give incentives to medical offices and hospitals to adopt electronic medical records. And as somebody studying economics, it was unbelievably exciting because now you have this treasure trove of data to analyze, build regression zones, build predictions. That's exciting. And one night, and honestly, I don't know why, I decided to read the law, the stimuli law. And what I realized was the language around interoperability of systems to qualify for the stimuli was extremely weak. So my prediction, which 15 years later, this is exactly what's happened, is we're gonna go from hard copies on the shelf in doctors' offices into siloed database and systems, and your records cannot really talk, operate, travel, which is what we have today, right? You switch doctors, even if they're probably both using Epics, how easy it is for you to take your data, bring it back, right? It's not happening. So my thought was, well, what if I built that interoperability layer? What if I was able to bring the data, standardize it? And the idea being is, well, one of the best predictors of what ails you is your medical history. What you have can probably predict, understand, especially as you age, it becomes more and more critical, what's happening today so that it can set faster diagnosis, get better outcomes, or prevent something terrible, right? I mean, we have, crazy amount of people today getting hospitalized, having awful medical outcomes purely because of adverse interactions with medicine, purely because doctors and pharmacists don't have the full view into what people are taking. It is preventable. It's an absolute preventable case if you have the right data available. So I'm like, well, let me go about investigating and starting, and I tried many ideas and approaches, and eventually settling in working with health information exchanges. At some point, I guess my claim to fame, on my platform, we had access to medical records of 95% of population of state of Maine. Why Maine? Well, I lived in Boston back then. I was able to build partnership. It was actually fantastic test case to launch. So we had, pretty good access to medical data. But starting that was crazy. First of all, 2009, where the height of the height of financial crisis, and me trying to fundraise as the first-time founder in a very complicated, regulated space, trying to fundraise. Also, I'm a foreigner. I had to raise it enough to be able to sponsor myself for a work visa. Otherwise, I get deported and I leave. And two, another thing that happened is my parents had to flee my home country of Kyrgyzstan and seek political asylum in U.S. Because they tried to assassinate my father. So now I had to build new venture with a kind of basically bootstrap shoestring budget while also supporting my parents. And I thought, yes, let's continue building the company. Today I'm like the risks of being deported towards a country that was, threatening our lives, not a smart decision. So I don't know why I continued. It worked out. I was able to raise funding, help my parents find feet in the United States. But that was my path to start. And to question, so how did I start it? It felt it was the only path to try to go about it. And I worked on startups, many startups afterwards. And I realized I do not like entrepreneurship. I do not like entrepreneurships. I do not like building companies. Unfortunately, frequently starting your own company is the best path available to me to try to solve the problems that interest me. Because with a startup is, well, you have no resources, you have hardly any, track, reputation, foundation from which to build on, but you also have no limitation in terms of what you're allowed to be built, what you need to focus on, what you can prioritize. Right? If there was a company that taught me, internally kept Ilyas, said like, Ilyas, we're going to hire you. You just build, internally things for us or for our market. And then today can be healthcare, tomorrow can be education, on the third day can be recruiting, and we're going to keep paying you. I think I'd be happy. And I don't need a lot of pay, honestly. I'm a very simple man. I have very low requirements. But such a job does not exist. So, I have to keep starting companies.
Got it. No, I totally feel that challenges that come with it. And I guess the desire to build something is greater than the pain of having to go through the whole startup process that you end up doing it, regardless of the fact that, you have a preference for it or not. Now, how do you find, in your first venture, did you have a co-founder, or were you the only founder?
I had co-founder. I met it serendipitously. And I guess my co-founder, at my house was serendipitously. I worked on another venture for a few years where my co-founder was a acquaintance of mine who became my best friend, and then my coworker. So me and my coworker started, and then I brought in my acquaintance, and we really bonded to it. Silential was serendipitously. I met Andrew serendipitously. And the last one, Klaus Sauer, is very easy. I've known co-founder all my life. Literally, it's my brother.
That answers the question of how you found your co-founders. How did you end up lining up investors for your ventures?
So here's the thing. Investment is a very interesting thing because it's very hard to get better at. It's hard to get good at fundraising in the way that's presented to us. In terms of, here's a good fundraisers, here's a deck, here's this deck, here's that deck, here's all the advice from VCs. But in reality, if you're good at fundraisers, you don't fundraise very often. It's to be good at anything requires practice. Mm-hmm. Even if you raise 3-4 rounds for your one startup and the next one is still 5-6 interaction, instances of full circle. So it's not allowed to get good at fundraising. So everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own strength. And it really depends on a person, what works for them. And it's very much an area where it's not one size fits all. You have to figure out what works for you. So let me share you what I think is right, at least for me. So what is best advice that I've heard? It comes from a gentleman. I met him at Zynga. He was product leader there. He's a very successful entrepreneur. He has now fintech startup called Runway, Zeke Chen. Zeke. He made a fantastic post that really helped, and it basically said is, effectively every VC will tell you, here's a perfect deck for you to present. He said it's a terrible advice. Never follows it. Because if you do, you're one of the million ones just following their pattern. Now, what you should do, you should be very different. You should do the only format that helps you tell your story and ignores the templates. Because the main part of fundraising is to be able to tell your story. And trying to shoehorn a certain template, even if it's by VC that you're pitching to, sets you up for failure. That's one. And the second one is, that generally works for me, is really try to build a good offering, build a good product, something that you can sell. Being a good storyteller, a good seller, having all this connection is great, but it's hard to build. It's infinitely easier to truly build a good company, build a good product which you can sell. And that's helped me a lot with fundraising because I believed and I knew what to build is strong, it's fundable, it's remarkable. And there's another one, there's a fantastic data point. I forgot who read it, who I read it from. It might have been Zeke himself, because if you don't follow him, he drops fantastic startup advice.
What is his name?
Zeke Chen. Siquichen. Chen. He runs, Runway, a fintech startup. I think it's that where I think 80% of deals that Sequoia funds were outbound. What it means is 80% of the deals that they funded is they reached out to the founder themselves because they identified, learned, and talked about it. So what it means is if you're trying very hard to try to get an introduction to them in front of them, then you're already in the 20%.
You want to be found.
You want to be found. And that comes from building something very good. And that's kind of dovetails to what is happening today is unless there's you really have to have money to build something, go bootstrap it. Because the cost of building has really gone down significantly in terms of being able to build, to test, to validate, to get early traction. Do as much as possible before any money. Because now you really have to think critically is, do I actually need this money? Do I want it? Does it help it for me? Or is that a requirement without which I'm not able to execute the visions that I have? And honestly, frequently is no. In most cases is at least the point where people begin to think or try to fundraise, they can truly make more progress with fundraising. And then you have to evaluate is, do I make more progress and try to fundraise, or do I fundraise right now? And it's a pros and cons process you have to go through.
Got it. Wow, that's very, very insightful. I guess, of all the material that I've looked at personally, this seems to stand out. The key things being for me is like, one, you want to build something that, has a VC trying to look for you rather than you going into the 20%. I didn't know that match, that breakup between 80 and 20. So that was very insightful. Now, you've had successful exits. What do you think is successful action that helps with taking, capital from outside sources or bootstrapping and then having an exit that is profitable?
Again, entrepreneurship is really interesting because it's heavily depends upon personalities, background, spaces, and for every anecdote I can tell you, you can find many counter anecdotes, and they're all valid. It's helpful to go about understanding your strengths, your approaches. What helped me the most is what I actually then later learned is really well summarized in the culture of Zenefits. Parker Conrad they have this rule in terms of approaching initiatives. It's called ready, shoot, aim. The basic comes down to is take an action. If you're not fully sure of it, take an action, because once you've taken an action and you get a result, further navigating, further action precision to arrive at that is a lot better. Again, it's not a maxim that's going to work in every space, every situation, every person, but that's what I find in terms of things that I work on, things that I found my personality else, that is summarized the best. And I also work and mentor in different accelerators and startups and help us. And most entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs that I've encountered, especially early in their career where they're trying to get their first results, professional result, that applies heavily to them. Take an action, take a result, do it. Try to sell it, try to present it, try to launch it. And you can debate pros and cons all day, just first action.
A bias towards action, and that was a very fascinating view about the aim comes from the action or shooting. That's good. So now, having managed multiple organizations, teams over the years, are there any myths that you have uncovered as far as managing or leading?
Mm-hmm. So, myth. I think there are two, and they're applicable to me. the best managers I worked with started off as people managers, but mostly as people who drove tangibly results for the company, or as managers who worked for me that I hired as my employees. They're really not managing people. They're managing the process of product. They're managing an output. So if you're leading sales, the focus is not like managing sales team. It's focusing to make sure that we're selling. If you're marketing, make sure that we are marketing effectively. This is the primary thing. As a product manager, make sure that you are strategically finding product. You're working with the new engineers to make sure that we're doing the most effective way. Like you're managing the process, the output, not the people.
Yeah.
And that's been most effective for the company. Those people have also been most effective as people managers. Because another thing that I learned for myself, and I felt early in my career, I had this naive perception, and I think we are largely disserviced by the LinkedIn and the constant advice being shown to everybody. It's like, what is a manager? What is a leader? And it creates a perception that every manager is great and must be great, and every manager you have is a leader. But that's not true. Management is extremely hard, and therefore most managers suck. Most managers are terrible. The reason why we have these stories about these great leaders and managers is because they stood out in a domain that's very hard and did an excellent job. It's a very few cases. Because think about it, like if we didn't have those standout examples, it means everybody's good. That's not a topic. So our expectation is that to perform, to do well, is because I'm expecting my manager to be good. I'm expecting them to mentor. Honestly, it almost created perceptions. The whole point of a company is to grow me as a person in my function, which is not true. It's naivete. Your purpose as an employee is to produce more value to the companies that you cost, and that creates, positive, eventually trickles up and it creates profit and makes us enterprise sustainable, successful. It's a good business to be able to train you to take on new challenges, to expand your footprint, to do better. It is absolutely not a requirement. So if you are basing your career, your progression, and you're blaming not having a good manager, you're setting yourself for failure. Because in most cases, you're not going to have a good manager. You're not going to have a mentor or leader. Not because they're bad people, they're not incapable. In most cases, a very simple thing. It is really, really hard to do well. So to do well when you're an employee, and which becomes extremely clear as an entrepreneur, is you got to succeed not because of, but despite of. So if you're an employee, you really want to succeed, you think, how can I succeed despite my manager? Assume they're going to be detrimental and invitational. You need to figure out a way still to stand out, to succeed. As an entrepreneur is, you don't think in terms of how do I, succeed because I need all these great investors or advisors or anything, or connections that can give me contracts. No. How do I succeed despite having any of that? How do I build a business when I have no connections, no introductions, investor money, and I need to go and sell? And if you figure that path, I think if you have this mindset and you figure that path, any kind of contradiction to the rule where you actually chance upon a very helpful investor, or even better yet, a mentor or advisor who helps you, makes you introductions, a customer who hears your pitch, that just amplifies the potential for success.
Those are very good points, especially about managing despite the factors, right? And in a sense, you are compensating for those factors by taking responsibility for those factors and making it happen. So that's well said. Now, obviously, your current venture, uses AI, and the earlier one used AI before ChatGPT was even in play. So how do you see AI changing the product development process? I'm sure you've already seen it, but I wanted your take on like how you see it changing it right now and how you see it changing perhaps in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think in terms of usage, what I do see happening is more and more, you know, these chatbots, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, uh, having more tendrils, connecting to outside system platforms to really relying, being able to produce me more tangible action result. It's already happening, right? We started from early models like, oh, our limitation is like, knowledge base that's 2 years prior, so we can't really answer anything with that. Now can search the web, especially Gemini, right? They have searched the web, they indexed it, so they can now give it to you. Now they begin to expand to, well, let's help you shop or travel, which sometimes I know everybody jumps into e-commerce. I don't understand why I don't fully trust them yet. I think better yet would be, which hasn't happened, but it will absolutely will, is the following case. So I need to, I'm one of my weekend projects is I'm trying to bring back to life my motorcycle. I'm trying to call the mechanics that may come to it. So I can go do Google search in terms of, or Yelp in terms of available mechanics in my area. Or I can ask Gemini or Grok and say, could you please do analyze those because they have, the index quite a bit and say, give me all the mechanics, mobile mechanics that can come to my place. What would be even better is you can also go in and call them and say, do you have availability and roughly how much it's going to cost? This is what I actually need because I don't need the data. I need basically tell me these 5 mechanics are available to come. Who do you want? Tell me yes, I'll go tell them. Or better yet, I know your constraints. This mechanic fits all of them and he's coming tomorrow. It hasn't happened yet, but absolutely will, right? So these tendrils will be able to connect with areas is going to happen. So in terms of usage, this will absolutely be happening. So I think as a product development, as an entrepreneur, you need to start thinking is, how can I, as much as possible, connect these capabilities to the real world use cases? Yes, you might get swallowed where this capability is launched by themselves, or it might get acquired. Or you might develop unique data, which those companies will want to be able to bring in. So as an entrepreneur, this is one of the areas I would start focusing on. And a lot of it is, which makes it great for people like me, is technical capabilities are not as big of a limitation as being able to strategically identify opportunities and delve deeper into the space to truly understand what constitutes a good, effective, viable solution. It's really developing domain expertise in something, not whether it's technically feasible, because what we just described, it's all feasible. It's not available. And if it was available as a product, it would be a freaking hallelujah. But we know everything is there with the components. It's just how do we bring it packaged in a way, in a form factor that makes it effective for the users and therefore creates and translates into a successful venture. So I think that's how it's going to change the product development, is really delving into domain space. Product managers will be more and more required to be domain experts or keep developing domain expertise to try to understand where true value lies, where true problem is. It's not whether I can build it, but it's, can I ask the right question? That's become the harder part, and that's changing the role of product manager and what's required of a good product manager.
Yeah, I think I heard somebody the other day saying that, probably it's Arvind from Perplexity, but he said, if I want a data scientist, I'm going to look for the person that knows what to ask more than the person that knows how to do it. On a related note, in terms of product and user experience and so forth, 5 years out, where do you see products going in terms of their user interface?
That is an excellent question. And to be honest, I don't have a good answer for that. Because on one hand, we do have this movement belief is everything is just going to become a voice interface. And there's a good possibility there. Is, if I'm talking to my phone, the Siri or Google Assistant, it has all my data because all my life is this goddamn phone. And it can maintain all the history for me to be able to ask, to make decisions, so that I can achieve results just by asking. There's a big possibility there. In 5 years, what helps achieve the different interface we have is really safeguard against mistakes, our risk aversion. If I'm trying to, call my school, I have to, for my children at their school and ask about something, would I trust just to tell to Google and take care of it, given it's very important? I don't know. So even when a lot of our interactions will become voice related, where UI is actually not needed, because I have a problem, it can go directly to result with something in the background. As long as the result happens, I'm happy. We will need, based on people's risk tolerance, capabilities of technologies, specific use case, still some interfaces for us to feel in charge of the process to guard against risk. So what it takes, it's hard to know. But I do think something will happen is, I know a lot of my Uber organized friends have that, but it will become more and more common, I think, for people, is to have a personal dashboard for my life, where all the different interactions will be aggregated and my responsibilities, so that I have a more clear picture. It's not just having a black box in my AI assistant.
Wow. That's a nice vision. And also a good highlight of the problems that need to be solved along the way. Now, with the aspect of AI and, the changes happening in terms of how products are built and delivered, and the fact that you're on your next startup, what is like the most valuable hire that you could do today in your org?
The most valuable hire is somebody who knows how to create distribution. In today's world of startups, capabilities, what's available, the most valuable thing is no longer engineering, to be able to build something to sell the solution. Again, a rule of thumb, there are many cases, but the vast majority of them, it's going to be around, can you sell it? Can you build it? Can you reach the target audiences? Especially in a world where the best capabilities we have is also making the world a lot noisier. Creating distribution from content, outreach, finding people, identifying, is becoming easier and easier and easier. So it's a lot easier to build distribution. So there is noise because, whether a consumer you're trying to reach or a target buyer within an enterprise, they have finite time and attention. And how do you break through that in the most effective way? So today, for most startups, I would say is more so than necessarily building out a product, is try to focus as, can you build distribution? Because if you build distribution, you can figure out how to sell your product, or a different product, maybe has better product market fit, or that's by itself is business. I mean, right now, we have this incredible content creators, and even more so now, becoming business in and of themselves. Why? Because they have distribution.
So now this hire that you mentioned that would be focused around distribution, because that's key to a startup success. Do you see startups doing that as an in-house role, or do you think they could potentially hire experts, maybe on a consulting or a contract or a service basis, that, hey, get me so many leads and I'll pay you so much? Or I guess I'm curious what works for a startup.
Right now I'm based in Los Angeles, and I think Los Angeles startups in certain ways have advantage over Bay Area. The following thing, because pros and paying for leads, it's not an easy proposition at all. But you can absolutely hire experts for that. Somebody who can, if you can't hire them, find them full time, you can pay them per lead, hire them on as experts on part-time basis to give to you. And in Bay Area, prevailing culture is we want to hire somebody full time, so here is 24/7, they have full control. And Bay Area startups tend to, on average, be more apprehensive about hiring part-time experts, which in LA maybe is driven by Hollywood, but it's all about experts for specific domain areas. They're culturally, they're a lot more present. And it's absolutely an area we can do. And I see definitely companies here be more open, hiring outside experts to show, like, can you help plug us in? Or can you help me get it started? Or at the very least, can you get going so I understand what it is so I can learn so we can build it internally? And because what happens is in Bay Area, everybody wants this 1% person. Well, somebody who's already done it and sold $1 billion company, now they want to come back and do it for them. Good luck selling to that. But if you can, absolutely bring this person in the house, whatever it takes. What about the rest? You can't find those people. And would you be limited by of not having this function go ignored? You shouldn't. You should absolutely hire somebody. You should experiment to be able to see what works for you.
Makes sense. So now on the subject of roles and jobs and stuff, for somebody that's graduating out of college or is considering becoming a college student, right? What's your advice to them about entering this space versus some other field?
Oh my God. This is an excellent question. And I am so grateful that my children are very small and I don't have to think about it versus the ones who are entering college or leaving college right now, because I really don't have an answer, because it is hard. It is upheaval. What I'm hearing more and more is college students are not able to get internships. Fresh graduates are struggling to get jobs. And to be honest, a lot of it is driven by, the job market is not doing great, especially when it comes to tech sector. It's communicated, because we're more efficient in AI, because, our technology works so well. I think it's just a positive bullshit that companies are spinning to present better. It really is. There's no hiring because there's not much need. There was bloat hiring before. There's not availability of jobs, not because they got taken away by AI all of a sudden. That's it. But I still think it's an excellent time to be entering tech speed, because during a time of a big change, and we are going extreme change, how things are done, the skills that are learned is changing. So somebody who has spent 10 years in this and now has to relearn and compete with somebody who doesn't have that, it's hard. So learn what's the best way to do it today. So while it's hard to find a job, if you can close on it and you can keep trying to reinvent or change how it's done today, you will be in a better position once we kind of has gone through much of this change in terms of what the best practices are, maybe 2, 3, or maybe 5 years down the road. What I would advise to younger people, maybe less so, fresh college grads, but even then is, because I'm hearing a lot of discussions like, never do free internships. It's they're taking your free labor. I think it's people who say that do big disservice to people, because realistically, the labor that intern offers to a company is negative to a company. The time it takes me to explain what needs to be done, check your work, have done revision, is more than it would have taken me if I did the job myself. So I, as a manager, spending time on an intern's output is purely investment helping them grow. The whole body as an intern, maybe one day going to come work for me more efficient, but in most cases it doesn't happen. So it is a negative for the companies. So when I was in college, I did a lot of free internships. And I was extremely grateful for that, because it gave me the knowledge, the actual skills, the space, the connection to then get a career, get a specific job, do better at them, or build a relationship that led me to having customers for my startups, or sometimes even investors. One of the people I worked for as a free intern ended up being my investor now, many years down the road. So if you can close on an internship, especially as a college student, do it. Because realistically, you are getting a huge return on your time from whatever output you're producing by having a real life case to learn. You're getting knowledge. You also stand down in this horrible job market that unfortunately new graduates or future graduates are finding themselves in. Because you're going to be somebody who has tangible experience working at a company producing something practical and effective versus somebody who hasn't had that experience. So say while everybody's talking how it's your labor is being used and don't work for free, change that. Go work for free. Has the best work experience, the close work experience. Prove yourself. Build those relationships.
Yeah, that's great advice. And looking back to when I started working, it really wasn't the money; it was more the work. Especially when you're young and out of college, that's really what you're focused on, and your footprint is so low financially that you could afford to, take a risk there. And on the subject of risk, what do you think of people having experience in larger organizations and then they go off to do entrepreneurship? Do you see that as a positive, I guess, an asset that they would bring to their venture, or is it a liability?
Oh, it's really case by case basis, but it can absolutely be an asset where, and having worked at Zynga and then Scopely, which both years later I realized what a tremendous asset it was for me, because both companies did extremely well. They were hiring most amazing people that I get to learn from, to build a relationship with, still learning to today, just following them and tapping to their wisdom, to having co-founders, customers, co-workers, years later, supporters. If you have a chance to work at a company to build those relationships, especially a competitive company where these are people who have bright future careers ahead of them, it's a great thing to do. At least was for me. So many of my coworkers in the past end up being my customers. It was not a make or break for us, but absolutely, change an objective trajectory purely because they picked up my phone call and I had a chance to deliver my first sales pitch. And realistically, if you are especially starting a company that works on enterprise, you want your former coworkers to pick up your phone and say, I'll listen to you. Not to give you a contract, they're not going to give it to you, they shouldn't. You still have to earn it, but they will answer it. And that's unbelievable asset if you have more people who are just willing to give you 15 minutes of your time to listen to you, be it as potential angel investors, customers, or coworkers that you want to hire. So I think working in bigger companies who then pursue entrepreneurship could be absolutely valuable. So from people perspective, it's also extremely valuable if you develop deep expertise in the space in which you're building a venture, so that you understand where true value may lie and how to present it. And especially in most cases, ideal cases, entrepreneurs I've seen who've doing extremely well, leaving the larger organizations, is leaving with the contracts from their company. They basically left to build what they already sold to their company. I think that's the ideal case, because you're now leaving with a live customer. And that's possible if you are working well, you have proven yourself, and you're delivering something valuable.
Now, in closing, some questions that are not so much focused on the industry or the profession as much as your own personal view of it. Now, how has your career in product development influenced life outside of work?
Oh, I am extremely grateful for entrepreneurship, of having started my own companies, for the life that I have. What I care most about in terms of what my life is to me, it's my family, it's the connections, the people connections I have, and it's my friends, the circles that I've built. It really helps to understand who understands you, who knows you, who cares about you when you're trying to build a company. Who is your friend when you thought your friend and you send them an email, they don't respond, versus the one says, come here, please speech my manager because I think you're legit. I'll put myself on the line to give this case to you. Or even they don't have to, people who will take personal risks to help you. I have many in my life, and even if we're not working today anymore, there's the people I cherish the most because I am unbelievably grateful for what they have done for me. Is I got to understand people who, took the time to learn to care about me. And if I wasn't building companies, would I have been able to build this relationship, understanding? I don't know. But now the bonds that I have, the appreciations that I have, and the things I will go to the ends of the earth for them because I got to know them through building my companies.
Fascinating. I feel like I walked away with a very unique perspective that you don't get out in the press on these, right? Like you go read forums or blogs or whatever. I don't think this comes out like this. And your own story is unique, just like everybody else's is. And I like the perspective that you bring about the value of human connections. Like the question about is it valuable to work in a large organization and then do entrepreneurship? I didn't know where the answer was going to go, but I was fascinated by the fact that, yes, you build a great network of amazing people that you can then, connect with as you do your business. So I think, you brought some very valuable perspectives on all the questions that I asked. And I personally feel like I walked away learning some new things, new perspectives.
Thank you very much. It was a fun conversation.
We haven't finished yet.
But what I was gonna say is, and I appreciate you saying it, but maybe it's really like data science. It's really about a person asking the question.
Oh yes, yeah, true. That is correct. The question that you ask, what does it elicit? If let's say you hadn't chosen this career of building products in tech, what might you have done?
If I wasn't career in tech, my first love is cars. I love cars. I mean, honestly, it's mechanical cars, motorcycles, planes, but really cars, my first love is. So that's why I started my career as a mechanical engineer, because I wanted to work for other companies. But, 2009, so we're all going bankrupt. So not a great time, and just life took a different path. And if if plan A worked out, I'm probably working for some car company, tinkering, building something. Because I think part of why I also like entrepreneurship and building is I like tinkering. I like building. I like trying new things and see how it works. I like knowing the problem and then kind of just, lab weight up to see how can I solve that. Entrepreneurship is the path frequently is, well, let's see if this is a solution. If I go sell it, great. Okay, now let's go build it and sell it. But it's the same mindset if I said, well, we have this engine that needs to be better output, or if it's, EV, we need a more stable and cheaper suspension, go figure out how to do it. That's probably what I've been doing, what I would have been doing.
Fascinating. So your fascination with cars, did it start with just the aesthetics of cars, or was it more the functional aspects like the engine, and like where was your attraction initially?
It started definitely first with the aesthetics, the attraction. And I remember the point where I kind of fell in love with cars. So it was 1992. And my father, the Soviet Union fell. We're now living in independent state Kyrgyzstan. And my father was a professor at a university at the time. And he was invited along with a few other people to take a tour of America, of university, so that new higher education model, the liberal arts American could be brought to this newly independent states. And he was one of those people, and they took him, I think 3 months long trip through America. And but we also come from a very poor country, so my dad, he couldn't afford to bring us any presents because he couldn't afford anything. So what he did is he brought, kind of the free magazines. Oh, he wanted to bring gifts, but he couldn't. So what he did is, because they were staying in these hotels, and there's hotel magazines. So he took a few to bring to us to show this is what life in America is. Because remember, it's also 92. they took, some photos, official ones, but there were only photo cameras for consumers to use to take a picture to show them. And I remember it was, 92, and it was an article about a Detroit motor show that just happened. And they unveiled Dodge Viper. So it's 1992, it's a fall suit. We have old Soviet cars, which I love, they're cool, but it's, really things that were designed in the 60s and 70s and haven't changed for 30 years. And then you have a Dodge Viper picture. Oh, I feel, somewhere, in boxes back in Kyrgyzstan, I still have that magazine. Had it next to my bed for the longest time. It's still my favorite car. And I think that's what got started on the path, the aesthetics, the view, and then delving into the mechanical aspects of it. And I guess I developed fascination with engineering, or really just the process of creation. You have a certain goal, and there's a method which you can, find a solution to create and solve it and achieve something remarkable, which honestly, software engineering and attack translates very well, because instead of, gears and mechanical oil, I have, AWS and AI APIs, but it's just really putting together to create something that's solve problems for people, makes lives better. And kind of one of my favorite life experiences, many years later, I got to the creator of Dodge Viper was this legendary auto executive, Bob Lutz. I got to meet him many years later and get my book signed. And that's kind of my other hobby is, I love books and reading them, but it's having, moved from different countries and places and houses. Moving is hard. And boxes of books is the worst thing to breathe. So what? With especially all the Kindles, physical books have no value. I should never hold them unless it's a book I really like and I can get it autographed by the author. So I have a, small collection of few books that I enjoy that I've managed to get autographed over the years.
I see. So it was a book by Bob Lutz that you got.
A book by Bob Lutz that he autographed, and I had the chance to tell them, look, you are the reason why to this day I love cars, and it sent me on a life path that ultimately still led to what it is today.
Fantastic. Now, is there a question you wish I had asked you today?
That's what? Not really, because I think you do have very insightful questions and ability to probe into, all the different aspects that comprise a person and their life path, experience. So I don't think there's anything left you could have asked.
Okay, great. Okay, well, Ilyas, this was a fantastic conversation, very insightful. And thank you for being on here and sharing your unique journey and insights and wisdom. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope what I share today will be helpful to your listeners.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found this episode insightful. Join me for the next episode in 2 weeks where I interview another guest.